I invite the member for Langley East to lead the House in prayer or reflection.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Just around the corner is Mother's Day, and in honour of that, I just wanted to share a poem by Helen Steiner Rice, recognizing all that our mothers do for us. A mother's love is something that no one can explain. It's made up of deep devotion and sacrifice and pain. It is endless and unselfish and enduring, come what may, for nothing can destroy it or take that love away. It is patient and forgiving when all others are forsaking, and it never fails or falters. Thank you to all the mothers out there for everything they do.
Introductions by members. Member for Vancouver West End.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Well, we all know how important democracy is here in the Legislature and indeed in our communities across British Columbia. We also know the importance of engaging our young people, and the ideas that they bring to our democracy are so vital, and their role in the future is so vital. So we should treat them as the leaders that they are today. It gives me great pleasure on behalf of the House, the Speaker, our Assistant Deputy Speaker, and indeed every member to congratulate and celebrate and welcome the winners of the Democracy in Me Art Contest, hosted by the Speaker. In the category of kindergarten to grade 4, the winner is Chloe Chang. She's here along with her, there she is, well done. She's along here with her, So we're going to do those applause for each winner now that we've done that for the first one. But she's here with Jackson Chang and Jessie Wong, family members. Of course, it takes a family. Well done. In the grade 5 to 8 category, we have Joyce Lee. Everybody? She's here along with Alice Lee, Brian Lee, and Jeffrey Lee. And then in the grade 9 to 12 category, we have Jayla Boudwin. Jayla? And she is here with Jennifer Boudwin. Thank you for the ceremony this morning, Honourable Speaker, and I look forward to joining the members, the winners, with the Assistant Deputy Speaker for lunch, where I'm sure they will educate us even more about how we can build a better future for them and kids their age. So, well done. Thank you for caring about our democracy.
Member for Burnaby Lougheed.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. Among all the Democracy and Me Art Contest winners, I want to give a special shout out to the youngest winner, Chloe Chen, and also welcome her family, her dad, my godfather, Jackson Chen, and Chloe's mom, Jessie Wong, to the house. They are my chosen families and close friends who I met before Chloe was even born, of course, shortly after my arrival in Canada. And I'm such a proud auntie of Chloe, whose artwork has been recognized in many competitions, and now by the BC Legislature. Chloe is a brilliant young artist, and you can see her artwork behind me and some more of her artwork through her ETBT Mini Artist Instagram profile at CCLulu77. I'm also really glad that the family will be having having lunch with my other chosen family, my adopted dad, the Honourable Speaker, for lunch today. So I ask the House please make Chloe and her family very, very welcome. Thank you.
Member for West Vancouver Capilano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like the House to welcome two amazing women who are strong advocates for women's rights from the Restitution Project, who are here today to meet with and talk to our caucus about the important work that they're doing. Susan McRae and Sherry Thompson, welcome to the House today.
Member for Richmond South Centre.
Honourable Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to thank you again for hosting the award winners from our Democracy in Me Art Competition. On behalf of Richmond South Centre, I also want to echo my Richmond North Centre colleague, Richmond Steveston colleague, Richmond Queensborough colleague, for all four of us want to come together and congratulate Joyce Lee, a winner from Richmond for grade 5 and grade 8 category. Joyce Lee, you make all of us proud. We want to welcome you and your family to our legislature. Please join us and welcome together.
House Leader of the Fourth Party.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have four guests that are here with me today. I'd like to introduce Roy Taylor, Andrew Firth, Raymond Price, and Rod Robertson, who are part of the great blue wave that's coming across this country, Mr. Speaker. Would the House please make them feel very welcome?
Minister of Children and Family Development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have a guest in the gallery today, Eureka Gabo, who I met through a poli-sci class at UBC, but is a first-year psychology student at UBC, and who I've had a chance to connect with a number of times now. She's a keen volunteer, works with kids and youth, really committed to community, really committed to learning. I'm grateful for the chance to be connected with her and to have her join today. And I'm hoping the House can make her feel very welcome. I also saw in the gallery Karen Aitken, Honourable Speaker, who many folks here know, of course, in parliamentary education and outreach. Of course, Karen also set me up on a blind date about 16 years ago, and so a special place in my heart for Karen. And so I'd also like to make her feel very welcome.
Government House Leader.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. Today we have some special guests here from the Ministry of Housing, from the individuals who work within the Deputy Minister's office. We have Lisa Shepherd, Laura Sampson, Cassandra Finley, Karen Kaur, and Braden Polson. Also 2 co-op students in the gallery today who are working alongside our ministry staff. We've got Hayden Walker and Nick Call. I'm hoping the House can please make them all very welcome.
Minister of Emergency Management.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. It is that time of year again when we welcome something very special to this House and across British Columbia. I said something because it is not a person, but an emergency alert test will be issued tomorrow morning at 10:55 a.m. Just want to give people a heads up that you will be receiving an alert on your mobile devices. In order to receive that alert, you must be connected to LTE or 5G network, not be on Do Not Disturb or airplane mode, and have up-to-date software. And no, it is not possible to opt out of the service. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Over this past weekend, workers in this province lost a great leader, a committed advocate, and British Columbia lost a remarkable human being. Kim Novak, the president of United Food and Commercial Workers, Local 1518, passed away this weekend. Kim was a friend to many, a powerful voice to workers in this province. She devoted herself to improving the standards of living for workers, not only her members, but all workers. Elected unopposed to lead UFCW in 2019, and she had recently been elected to a second term. Kim was tireless in her dedication to labor movement. She believed very strongly in the power of collective bargaining and in solidarity among all workers. She was a leader in a truest sense of the word. She was the first woman and youngest leader in the history of our local. And she also served Vice President of UFCW International and on UFCW Canada National Council. Her service to tens of thousands of UFC members is an inspirational not only to her members, but to all of us. Kim's family has reminded us how to honor her legacy. Quote, doing something today to embody how Kimberly lived. Be kind, make someone laugh, lend a hand, unquote. She will be missed, Mr. Speaker. And you know yourself and many in this House had personal experiences with her, dealings with her. And she was so warm and welcoming, never forgot what her role was in this society to improve the workers' lives, never stopped working on behalf of those workers. So, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of all members of this House, I want to offer my sympathies to Kim's family, her friends, to UFCW Local 1518, and all those touched by Kim's life. Mr. Speaker, she will be missed. I hope members will join me in honoring the life and service of Kim Novak.
Thank you, Minister. Madam Clerk.
Introduction of bills.
Member for West Vancouver, Sea to Sky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that a bill entitled the British Columbia Transit Amendment Act 2024, of which notice has been given in my name on the order paper, be introduced and read a first time now. Mr. Speaker, this is the fourth and I suppose the last time I will propose this amendment as an initial step to creating regional transit to connect communities of Mount Currie, Pemberton, Whistler, Squamish, Britannia together and ultimately with TransLink and Metro Vancouver. We've known for many years now that the Sea to Sky region is growing rapidly. The last census numbers confirm these are the fastest growing communities in British Columbia, with growth rates of 18% in Whistler, 22% in Squamish, and an astounding 34% in Pemberton. And is evidenced by the Sea to Sky Highway with its limited capacity getting busier and busier. BC Transit, local government, and the Squamish and Lilwat nations also recognize it, and it's time for this government to recognize it as well. Through the 25-year Sea to Sky Transit Future Plan, the region has been with one voice advocating for a regional transit service. It's really the low-hanging fruit, Mr. Speaker, that can help to meet the demand created by Greyhound's abandonment of the region and further fueled by rapid growth in population and recreation. The first step in the creation of this service is straightforward. Currently, only local government elected officials are eligible to sit on a Sea to Sky Transit Commission. This bill rectifies this issue by amending the BC Transit Act to allow elected representatives of the Squamish and the Lilwat nations to also serve on the Commission. This supports the memorandum of understanding between the parties, which speaks to governance, growth, a funding model, and reconciliation. Last summer, I was optimistic that the government was finally listening and planning to act in the interests of efficiency, connectivity, environment, and growing support for growing communities in the Sea to Sky corridor. However, so far I've been disappointed. There's no question that these lack of transit services hurt kids, families, businesses, and people, drive people to their cars and put out their thumbs as the only option. It's time for government to have the backs of these communities with their innovative ideas and support the needed transit and accessibility expansions. Connecting communities, Mr. Speaker, is just too important to ignore. Mr. Speaker, move first reading of the bill.
Members, the question is first reading of the bill. All those in favour indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Member.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill be placed in the orders of the day for second reading at the next sitting of the House after today.
You have heard the question. All those in favour indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Madam Clerk.
Statements by members.
Member for West Vancouver, Sea to Sky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During Emergency Preparedness Week, with earthquakes, wildfires, tsunamis, floods, debris flows, avalanches, and heat domes being risks and realities that we as a province actively plan for, there is another threat that may seem remote and out of mind, but in some parts of the province, we must be anticipating. Mr. Speaker, not to overstate it, but between the stratovolcanoes of Mount Garibaldi in Squamish and Mount Meagher in the Upper Pemberton Valley is the Mount Cayley volcanic field, which stretches from the Pemberton ice cap to the Squamish River. A volcanic eruption in this region may seem way down the list of things to worry about, but it's not as remote a risk as one may think. Some of us remember another famous stratovolcano, Mount St. Helens, which killed 57 people, destroyed 200 homes and nearly 300 kilometers of highway. And ever since, the United States Geological Service has taken that lesson to heart and maintains a rigorous monitoring program of their Cascadia volcanoes. Mount Meagher's last eruption generated ash which can be found far out into the prairies. And imagine what a similar eruption today would mean of the communities in the Sea to Sky and the Lower Mainland. And Mr. Speaker, it's a perfectly plausible scenario. Academics are always interested and active when money becomes available. Energy companies are interested in exploring for geothermal opportunities, while heli-skiers regularly fly the area. But in reality, there is no targeted monitoring done on any of BC's BC's volcanoes, and there's 30 of them. Mr. Speaker, the forces that produce these volcanoes are still active, and an event in the Sea to Sky would be life-altering for the people of British Columbia. Mr. Speaker, we can't stop volcanic activity, but we can prepare for it. Let's equip BC volcanologists and geologists with the tools and the funding they need to implement active monitoring of volcanoes in our province in an attempt to keep our communities prepared.
Member for North Vancouver Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm grateful to acknowledge that I'm speaking on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen people, specifically the Esquimalt and Songhees nations. I extend my thanks to them for the opportunity to live and work on this land. Furthermore, I'm privileged to live, work and learn on the unceded territories of the Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish nations within my riding of North Vancouver Seymour. As we embark on National Nursing Week 2024, which is themed Changing Lives, Shaping Tomorrow, it's imperative to recognize the profound impact nurses have on individuals, communities, and the future of healthcare. This week, from May 6th to May 12th, serves as a tribute to their dedication, resilience, and unwavering commitment to excellence. Nurses are the backbone of our healthcare system, tirelessly working to improve patient outcomes, advocate for those in need, and pioneer innovations that shape the future of healthcare delivery. Their compassion, expertise, and advocacy brings about transformative changes in the lives of patients and their families. The theme, Changing Lives, underscores the profound impact nurses have on patient care and advocacy. Through their unwavering dedication, they bring about positive changes in health outcomes and ensure that every individual receives the care and support that they deserve. Moreover, their advocacy efforts drive systemic changes that benefit entire communities. Shaping Tomorrow highlights nurses' roles as pioneers of innovation and educators who shape the next generation of healthcare professionals. Their commitment to lifelong learning and advancement drives advancements in treatment, technologies, and patient care practice, ensuring a brighter and healthier future for all. As we celebrate National Nursing Week, let us express our gratitude and admiration for the invaluable contribution of nurses. Let us stand in solidarity with them, advocating for improved working conditions, resources, and recognition for the indispensable role in promoting health and wellness in our society. Together, let us champion nursing excellence and create a healthier, more equitable future for all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Cariboo North.
Mr. Speaker, I am thrilled to announce that Quesnel is the proud home of a new Junior A hockey team in the Kootenay International Junior Hockey League, the Quesnel River Rush. The Quesnel River Rush will provide a platform for young athletes to showcase their talents, foster their development, and perhaps pave the way for bigger leagues and brighter educational futures. Having a team of this caliber in our city will surely drive our numbers in youth hockey upwards, melding into the trickle effect of improved mental health and structured team dynamics. We fondly recall their predecessors, the Quesnel Millionaires, whose legacy on the ice from 1975 to 2011 paved the way for our young hockey dreamers. Their spirit remains a beacon of inspiration, reminding us of the passion that hockey fosters for our locals. The team is owned by longtime hockey parent, coach, and hockey fan Tracy Merrow, and the coach and GM will be Dale Haddon. We're also extremely proud of the partnership with the Lataco Dene Nation, where the team has big plans to work closely together to collectively focus on youth in sports and community relations. The introduction of our new team is not just a win for hockey fans and future stars, but a victory for the entire community of Quesnel. The River Rush Games will serve as a rallying point for our community, a place where families and friends can gather together to cheer, celebrate, and share the love of the game, just as they have in previous seasons and will continue to do so for our beloved seniors men's team, the Quesnel Kangaroos. As we look forward to the first season this September, which we are doing so excitedly, we know that Quesnel hockey's not just a game, It's a vital part of this city's identity, and we are beyond thrilled to call it home to a team of this caliber.
Member for Langford, Bondi Fuca.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, May 10th is going to be a special day, a day to celebrate a monumental milestone, the 100th birthday of Bob McMinn, affectionately known to me and so many others as Mr. Highlands. For those who don't know Bob, it's clear why he's earned such a revered title. His century of life has been marked by unwavering dedication to community service, environmental stewardship, philanthropy, and his commitment to building a strong community spirit here in the Highlands. I don't get a chance to spend much time talking about the Highlands in this place, and I can't do justice in 2 minutes to recognize all that my friend Bob has accomplished in his life, but I'm going to do my best to try. Bob has called the Highlands home since 1953, when he and his late wife Nancy first settled there. Bob has profound dedication to our community, and he began very early. With a doctorate in ecology from UBC, he worked as a researcher in forest ecology both in the Kootenays and the White Spruce Forests of the Prince George Forest District. Yet his heart remained here in the forested areas just north of Victoria, where one can still even today get lost in the beauty of the woods. Bob was the first mayor the Highlands ever had when it incorporated as a municipality. He was one of his most notable contributions has been his tireless work with the Mary Lake Sanctuary, or recently renamed the Wamayathon Nature Sanctuary, a 42-acre protected forest and riparian area that supports biodiversity while preserving ecosystems and wild habitat. Bob, from an early age, understood the value of bringing community together, and that's one many people remember in his time as mayor. His efforts have been instrumental in preserving natural habitats. He's dedicated much of his worth, blood, sweat, and tears to saving the sanctuary from development. He founded the Highlands District Community Association, was a driving force for so many local initiatives. I could go on and on, Mr. Speaker, but as we celebrate Bob's 100th birthday, let us reflect on the profound impact he has had on the Highlands, celebrating not just the century he has lived, but the countless contributions he has made to enrich the lives of so many. Thanks very much.
Member for Caribou-Chilcotin.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We've had an amazing start to the rodeo season in Caribou-Chilcotin. We've had an incredible high school rodeo action 2 weekends ago and a spectacular classic indoor rodeo the weekend before. Hats off to the Call family, to the volunteers and the sponsors of the indoor rodeo, and of course all of those who came as spectators to enjoy our amazing Western heritage. Mr. Speaker, it was an absolute honor to introduce the Spring Classic all of the 2024 inductees to the BC Cowboy Hall of Fame, and what a group of inductees they were. The BC Cowboy Hall of Fame, working with the Museum of Caribou-Chilcotin, preserves and honors the history of pioneers in British Columbia. These men and women have left a legacy of perseverance, hard work, and instilled a lifestyle in generations that have followed them. I'm honored to introduce them today. Earl Buck, pioneer. Ken Stoney Watterson, competitor. Wanda Dorsey, pioneer. Isidore Celeste, family. Wilfred Anderson, working cowboy. Ollie Curtis, a competitor. Bill Schur, builder of Western culture. And of course the historic Rose Ranch, which is our century ranch this year. The incredible stories of these pioneers are the foundations on which many a young person has learned the lifestyle and the love of the land. I encourage you to look up BC Cowboy Hall of Fame and find out more about the fascinating lives of these early pioneers, the challenges they've overcome, and the joy that they have found in their lives will forever be a part of our lives. It is an amazing time to celebrate our Western heritage, and I can't wait to attend the Clinton May Ball, rodeos like Interlake, Saskatchewan, Anaheim, Redstone, and of course, Mr. Speaker, we'll see you at the world-famous Williams Lake Stampede. A hearty congratulations to all of the Cowboy Hall of Fame inductees for 2024. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Nelson Creston.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. British Columbia is an incredible place, drawing people from all over the world. But due to global inflation and expensive housing prices, the cost of living in BC is high. Speaking with youth in BC, they are worried about finding a place to live that they can afford and wonder if they will ever be able to buy a home. That is why our government is taking action to address affordability. Before 2017, predatory housing practices were widespread, which drove up housing prices dramatically. Speaking with a young person who is eager to work the election, I asked him what actions our government is taking that gives him hope. He said he is glad to see that our BC NDP government has been cracking down on the practices such as speculation and flipping. He is grateful that we are building over 100,000 homes and 8,000 new on-campus student beds, and that by limiting short-term rentals, there are more places for people like him to live. As a renter, he is grateful that last year we introduced the BC Renters Tax Credit, putting $400 back into the pockets of renters. And he is hopeful because we've cut costs for first-time buyers by expanding our first-time home buyers program. He is also deeply committed to climate action and is hopeful because our government is committed to climate action too, but he wants to see even more. Many young people don't remember living under repressive right-wing governments. I remember when climate scientists were silenced, thousands of government workers were laid off, and years of inaction on housing and health care means that we are behind. I am grateful to be a part of government that is taking
Please
action
turn her
for people,
phone off.
ensuring a...
Thank you, member. Just a reminder to all members, 2-minute statements are absolutely supposed to be non-partisan. Members. Madam Clerk.
Oral questions by members.
Member for Kelowna Mission.
Well, 18 months ago, the Premier promised tangible results. Instead, he's failed on every front. His legalization of open drug use has unleashed chaos. Meanwhile, 6 lives a day are still lost. At the same time, life has never been more expensive as he triples the carbon tax. This, despite the latest report revealing that BC's carbon emissions are going up. In fact, the NDP record is the worst in Canada. While British Columbians struggle to pay for gas and groceries, why is this Premier jacking up the carbon tax to 38 cents a litre and utterly failing to reduce emissions?
Minister of Environment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We continue to have confidence in our Clean BC roadmap, and it continues to show results. The emissions inventory changes because the federal government doesn't have accurate data on methane emissions to establish a baseline many years back. They admit this in their report, which I wish the member had read fully. The report is really clear, and I'll quote from the report. Despite these technical estimation issues, the oil and gas industry in BC has consistently been shown to have one of the lowest emission intensities, emissions per unit of production in Canada and internationally. This is supported by the recent atmospheric measurements. The 2024 national inventory shows a more than 50% reduction in methane emissions intensity between 2012 and 2022.
Member supplemental.
Results? Results? The results are that this NDP government holds the worst emissions record in Canada, with emissions rising from 61.9 megatons in 2016 to 64.3 megatons in last week's report. Shame. While emissions in nearly every other province have declined during that period, under this NDP government, emissions are on the rise. Wow. The Premier promised results, but has delivered only increasing emissions and higher costs for gas, groceries, and heating. Shame. With families struggling to afford essentials, why won't the Premier adopt BC United's plan to give people a break at the pump immediately and exempt the carbon tax on home heating?
Minister of Environment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And British Columbians have a really good chance to evaluate our plan because we report annually through a climate change accountability report. Perhaps British Columbians could actually judge the opposition plan if they had one, but they don't, and neither does the Conservative Party. I wish the member opposite had read the full report, had read the full commentary of the federal government on the report. Because the report is very clear. The report acknowledges that their ability...
Let the minister complete his answer, please.
The report acknowledges that the federal government, Environment and Climate Change Canada's ability to accurately establish a baseline that they used for calculating emission reductions is flawed. BC has the leading methane emission measurement methodology in Canada. Environment and Climate Change Canada has been clear. They want to work with us, and I'll quote once more. The expected upward revisions of pre-2020 emissions in next year's report would result in a larger reduction in intensity since 2012. The federal government is clear. They know they have a problem. They know we've got it right. They're going to work with us so they get it right too.
Member for Kamloops North Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's always remarkable with this government. They ask the federal government for decrim. It fails spectacularly. Now it's the federal government's fault for people using drugs on the streets. They ask the federal government to measure our emissions. It comes back that they're failing. And in fact, our emissions in BC are higher and going up compared to every other province in the country, and suddenly it's the federal government's fault once again, Mr. Speaker. It'd be wonderful if this government ever took responsibility for their failed actions. This government is simply incompetent at fighting climate change, just as incompetent as they are on the affordability crisis, Mr. Speaker. Perhaps if they hadn't funneled carbon tax dollars into their carbon tax kickback, they might actually have recorded some emission drops. Grocery prices have soared over 30% under this Premier's watch, and the Premier is hiking the carbon tax up to 38 cents a litre while emissions continue to rise. The NDP's Cost BC scheme has simply failed. So why won't the Premier adopt BC United's plan, remove the carbon tax on home heating, and give people an actual break at the pump for once?
Minister.
Honourable Speaker, I want to be really clear because the federal government has been really clear. Their methodology is flawed. They acknowledge it. They promise that next year they'll work with us so that it is better, and they say in their report very clearly that the result will show that this year's figures are not accurate and next year's figures will reflect the emissions that we've been experiencing in British Columbia steadily since 2018, 5% since 2018. The opposition, however, has no plan. The opposition thinks we should get rid of the single most effective measurement we've had to reduce emissions in British Columbia. They brought in the carbon tax. They watched the Conservatives turn their back on their carbon tax. They now are copycatting the Conservatives, but they can't hide from their record. They said when they were in power that they were proud of the carbon tax. It was effective. The now leader said if you want people to change behaviour, you put a cost to it and you ask them to consider shifting their behaviour. We've continued that. We continue to support British Columbians with a range of measures to support affordability, including 100% of the carbon tax increase going to low and middle income tax credits.
Member supplemental.
I think our emissions are rising just based on the government's lack of answers as we speak, Mr. Speaker. Here's some facts that the minister doesn't like to acknowledge. Carbon tax was capped at $30 a tonne. It was revenue neutral, and emissions were actually going down under our government. No longer revenue neutral. It's going up to $170 a tonne, or 38 cents a litre, and emissions are actually going up under this Premier. The minister can keep burying his head in the sand, but Cost BC scheme is a clear failure with the highest increases in emissions in the country.
Everything is more expensive, and the Premier is still determined to hike to 38 cents a litre at the pump with his carbon tax, even though emissions are rising. And the minister might want to talk about our position or Conservative position. Let's look at the federal NDP position. The leader, Jagmeet Singh, and other NDP leaders like the Premier in Manitoba, Wab Kinew, they both abandoned the carbon tax. In fact, even the NDP leader in Saskatchewan said a few days ago, and I quote, "The consumer carbon tax is simply not on for us, and the carve-out around heating fuel was unfair," end quote. With the Premier completely isolated compared to the rest of the country, Mr. Speaker, why does he continue to push a failed policy instead of adopting Clean BC's plan to remove the carbon tax on home heating and provide real relief by removing the taxes at the pump as well?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're proud of the Clean BC plan because it's working and everyone in Canada knows that it's working. Years ago, prior to the Conservative Party taking statements and positions against the carbon tax, the leader of BC United said, "I think cancelling the carbon tax, my personal opinion is that would be a terrible mistake." And he said that because he was proud of it and it showed initial results. And it showed initial results right up to the point when former leader... Members. It showed initial results right up to the point when former leader of the BC Liberals, Christy Clark, turned her back on climate action, along with the entire BC Liberal caucus. In 2018, we brought in a solid plan. We started implementing the plan, and it's having results. 5% reduction by 2018, and we have a range of supports for affordability for British Columbians that they had not seen in 16 years of BC Liberal government.
Members, as a courtesy, when a question is asked, let's be quiet and listen carefully. When the answer is provided, let's provide the same courtesy to the other side. House Leader of the third party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Teacher shortages across BC have forced schools to rely on uncertified teachers. The number of uncertified teachers in the province has tripled over the last 4 years. Portables have become a permanent fixture in many schools across the province. 20,000 teachers and 7,000 teachers' assistants will be needed over the next 10 years to keep up with growing enrollment, Mr. Speaker. The BC Teachers Federation has called on the government to create a comprehensive plan, remarkable that they don't already have one, to address the growing teacher shortage. Loan forgiveness and incentives for rural workers could vastly improve the outcomes for teachers, students, and the education system in British Columbia. It's a desperate situation in our public education system, the people on the other side claimed to support at one point. This government used to be that champion. We failed to see it while they've been in government. Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Education, what is the Minister doing to ensure that we have a thriving public education system in British Columbia?
Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, member, for this question. We know BC is not the only province that is dealing with the labor challenges, and the education sector is also one of them. But we are in the ministry, but also talking to all of our education partners, very cognizant of the need to hire more teachers. That's the reason, Mr. Speaker, that we have added more teacher training seats since we formed the government, more than 300 new seats, teacher training seats, giving incentives to teachers to take on this profession, but also having some very special recourse to hire rural and Indigenous teachers. We have a very robust working group, of which the BC Teachers Federation is also part of, working very closely with our education partners, looking at ways how we can support, how we can bring more teachers, and also the teachers who are already in the workforce, how to support them so that they can also they are also able to mentor and train, have more teachers come into this really productive and really, I would say, very fruitful profession.
Member supplemental.
Mr. Speaker, BC is the only jurisdiction that we're responsible for, and the students, our kids in the public education system, are the people that we should be looking out for. And unfortunately, I've watched over the last 7 years a BC NDP government that claimed to be champions of our public education system allow it to erode under their watch, Mr. Speaker. We're hosting a FIFA event here in a couple of years. $150 million. Think of what $150 million could do to offset the cost of inflation in our public education system, Mr. Speaker, something that school districts across the province have been complaining about to this government they failed to meet. The operational costs of our school districts are going up. This government has failed to meet those. We've seen libraries in our school systems close. This government has failed to meet those needs. We've seen tech departments fail to upgrade the tech that our students need to be successes. We've seen this government fail to meet those needs. Look, they've made a commitment to FIFA that they're going to be able to profit from this upcoming tournament. We need to see the same commitment to our kids and to our parents. Mr. Speaker, this BC NDP government has barely maintained the status quo. To the Minister of Education, why is the public education system eroding under this government?
Minister of Education. Members, let's hear the answer, please. Members at the back side, please. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't agree with the member statement. Since we formed the government, we have been championing public education. Unlike the previous government, we have made the investments like no other. Since 2017, we have invested not just in the capital projects, like till date, more than $3 billion just in the capital projects, but also in the public education, whether it is the operating funding, whether it is hiring more teachers. I just talked about the incentives that we are using for our rural and indigenous communities. With those incentives, we were able to hire 15 new teachers just in the last year, Mr. Speaker. I completely understand the challenges, the recruitment challenges, the labor challenges. We are very cognizant of. BC is not the only jurisdiction that is dealing with it. It is a Canada-wide issue, but also global issue, labor shortage that we are facing. But we are working with all our education partners. But I just want to reiterate again, Mr. Speaker, that we have invested in public education that the previous government, the old government, did not do.
The House Leader of the Fourth Party.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, here in the Legislature of British Columbia, we marked the solemn day of Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. This year, Yom HaShoah feels especially important as the conflict in the Middle East started by the barbaric Hamas terrorist attack on October 7th. It has spurred demonstrations here at home in British Columbia, Mr. Speaker. The demonstrations at the University of British Columbia and the University of Victoria are not innocent. They are marred with anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish hate. Some members of the NDP caucus have disputed this fact, which is unsurprising considering the accusations of anti-Semitism in the office of this NDP premier, throughout his caucus, and in the New Democratic Party itself. But, Mr. Speaker, it's not too late. This premier has the opportunity to demonstrate that he has changed his approach by being straight up with British Columbians and taking clear, decisive action. My question to the NDP Premier, through you, Mr. Speaker, will this NDP Premier ask the University of British Columbia to remove the encampment at UBC where anti-Semitic protesters are intimidating Jewish students, are intimidating Jewish staff, chanting genocidal slogans, and spreading hate speech? Or will he continue to allow anti-Semitism to continue to go unchecked under his watch here in British Columbia?
Minister of Post-Secondary Education.
Thank you, Speaker. And our government has made our position very clear.
University campuses have always been a place to freely debate ideas, but university campuses also have to be a safe place for all students, all staff, all faculty, especially Jewish students, staff, and faculty who are feeling particularly alone right now. We have made it clear that hate speech of any kind, including anti-Semitism, is not accepted on our campuses, and it is not accepted in our province. With my ongoing conversations with faculty, with students, and with the presidents of the universities, I remain confident that the universities have the ability and the tools and the policies in place to allow for a peaceful protest while also ensuring that students and staff are kept safe. Our universities are working closely with local law enforcement to ensure that the protests remain peaceful and that campuses remain a safe place for everyone. Thank you, Speaker.
Member supplemental.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The establishment of the so-called Palestinian Solidarity Encampment was attended by the pro-Hamas group Samandon's leader, Charlotte Cates, an American who has been charged with public incitement of hatred and willful promotion of hatred, Mr. Speaker. Charlotte Cates' speech in support of Hamas in the vile terrorist attack which occurred on October 7th was called, and I quote, the most hateful thing he could imagine by no one else other than this NDP Premier. In her speech, Kate praises the unimaginable violence, rape, murder, torture, and kidnapping of innocent Jewish people as heroic. My question to the NDP Premier through you, Mr. Speaker. The NDP Premier admits that Kate's speech is hateful, but what does he intend to do about it? Are these more empty words, or has this Premier asked Ottawa to deregister Sanandon as a so-called non-profit, and has he asked to deport Charlotte Cates, who is in fact an American citizen?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Speaker. And the celebration of death, of sexual violence, is abhorrent, and it is not tolerated on campuses. And that individual was arrested. Yesterday, we all stood in this House and talked about and remembered Holocaust and the events of October 7th. We talked about Never Again and how we need to continue to raise our voices and not be silent in the light of anti-Semitism. And that's why we have made our position very clear that anti-Semitism is not tolerated on campuses. It is not tolerated in our province. Hate of any kind is not tolerated. Our government is taking action. We believe that campuses remain a place to freely debate speech while also remaining places for safety for students, faculty, and staff, especially Jewish students. We're going to continue to take action, whether it be introducing the Anti-Racism Act, whether it be enshrining Holocaust education in K-12, whether it be providing funding for community groups and organizations who are experiencing hate. We will not tolerate anti-Semitism, and we will not tolerate hate in this province.
Member for Vancouver-Langara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, on a day of commemoration for Jews murdered in the Holocaust, the NDP member from Richmond, Queensborough, made deeply offensive remarks. He tokenized Jews, and he called concerns about anti-Semitism on university campuses inflated and unfounded. But he has faced no consequences. A double standard compared to the treatment of his former NDP colleague, the member for Coquitlam-Millardville, who was forced to resign by this Premier. When given the chance to show leadership and condemn these remarks, the Premier failed. Surely, he's had more time to consider the members' remarks and the community's reaction. I'll ask again, as I did yesterday, will the Premier condemn these hurtful remarks and mandate consequences for the member, or will he continue his double standard against Jewish people?
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. We have many times discussed in this House how we collectively have a responsibility to push back against hate in any form. We have shared in this House the many actions that we've taken as a government since October 7th. We understand that there's pain and fear in community. We understand that. That's why we're taking the steps we're taking. That's why we provide additional funding for especially Jewish communities that want extra safety measures in place for their own communities. That's why we've taken steps on anti-racism with the legislation that we have to address systemic racism. Now, the members can discount how important that is, but I can tell you, as someone who's been...
Members, members, question was asked. We all understand the gist of the question. Let the minister answer, please.
The member is asking me who's discounting. The member who asked this question was discounting Anti-Racism Act in his comments. I listened to his entire second read speech. He did. He was. He was. And, Honourable Speaker, but I can tell you, if the member from Prince George has a question, she should feel free to stand up and ask a question.
Members. Minister will continue.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Members will know that since 2017, we've been working on this issue. One of the first measures that we took on as a government was to bring back a Human Rights Commission, which was gotten rid of by a previous government. Honourable Speaker, we knew how important that independent office was. We heard from racialized communities. We heard from the Jewish community. We heard from First Nations community about how this office needed to be completely independent of government so they could truly be reflective of the needs of communities. So we've been committed to this, Honourable Speaker, since we formed government. We're committed to this now. We're going to continue to work with communities to address any issues that come forward so that everybody can feel safe in our communities.
Members, Vancouver Langara supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the House Leader for the government continues to stand up instead of the Premier in this House to address my questions yesterday and today, I would ask the member to withdraw his incorrect statement, which is that I did not have the opportunity to speak to Bill 23 on second reading. I certainly look forward to the debate on committee stage on that bill, but because of other bills that I was addressing in other chambers in this House. But I will say this, that the government has no plan since October 7th to address anti-Semitism in the province. It's escalating to a crisis level. The Premier and this entire government has been missing in action. The measures that this government purports to have said that they've done are only to really provide supports for security to a community that's under attack. That's it. The other initiatives, as the member from Coquitlam-Larville has pointed out, are initiatives that were underway for some years before October 7th. The Premier's continued refusal to confront anti-Semitism in his party has consequences. For the first time in nearly a decade, the Jewish Federation of Greater Vancouver boycotted the annual Yom HaShoah commemoration at the Legislature yesterday, amidst ceaseless warnings about a spike in violent rhetoric from extremist actors. It's alarming that campus protest organizers at the UBC encampment, in the Premier's own riding, has been linked to terrorist groups like Hamas. But the NDP continues to promote fringe groups and tokenize Jews at the expense of Jewish students, faculty and staff who are scared for their safety. When will the Premier put the safety of Jewish students, faculty and staff ahead of NDP internal politics, protect those targeted by hate, and address the anti-Semitism within his NDP cabinet, caucus, and government?
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I won't take this time to to share with the member his comments that he's made. I've got them here in front of me. But I will say that we know that there is fear within the Jewish community. We know that there's many that are scared. And that's why, Honourable Speaker, we continue to do the work we're doing. There requires a systemic change within society. That's why the anti-racism bill is important. But that's not the only thing. I've shared with this House on several occasions that there was the BC Prosecution Services updated their hate crime policy so that they could...
Member, let's be respectful, please, to each other. Please continue.
I've mentioned multiple times in this House the actions that we're taking on this. This didn't just start on October 7th. The work here started when we first formed government to ensure that everyone felt safe in our communities, regardless of who they love, regardless of their religion, Honourable Speaker. This is something that I hope all members in this House value, and that we're continuing to work together to ensure that everybody in this communities, in our communities, in British Columbia, across the country, feels safe in our communities.
House Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Look, what the official opposition and the member from Coquitlam-Millardville are trying to get at here with this line of questioning today is quite straightforward. You have a community, the Jewish community, which feels that they're under attack, and frankly, in many respects, they are. And so, as we all heard at the Yom HaShoah event, or commemoration yesterday in the Legislature, a very solemn date in the calendar to honor and remember 6 million victims of the Holocaust, and to acknowledge and remember the thousands of Jews who were slaughtered on October 7th, the language really matters. But so do the actions. And so the line of questioning that we have put to the Premier yesterday and today, which the Premier hasn't addressed, and the House Leader can get up and talk about initiatives and actions and things that predated the October 7th massacre. What we've been asking for this government to explain and for the Premier to categorically condemn are comments that continue to be made by members of his own caucus. Exactly. The member from Richmond, Queensborough, stood in this House yesterday morning on the same day that Jews and the Jewish community were getting together in the Hall of Honor. And he made comments in reference to anti-Semitism on campuses, and his exact words were, and I quote, that anti-Semitism on campuses is inflated and unfounded. Inflated and unfounded. So you can excuse the Jewish community and those of us that are trying to bring a voice to this in this place for not being willing to accept responses that talk about everything other than the words that have been uttered by members of the NDP caucus. So once again, on behalf of the Jewish community, on behalf of Jews who feel like they're under attack and are, will the Premier today condemn the comments that were made in this chamber yesterday morning, the comments from the member from Richmond, Queensborough, who said that anti-Semitism on campuses is inflated and unfounded? Will the Premier condemn those comments and demand that that member apologize to the Jewish community, and do it today?
Thank you all members for being quiet and respectful when the question was asked, and let's hope we finish the answer in the same manner. Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, we gathered with survivors and members of the Jewish community in the Hall of Honor. to commemorate Yom HaShoah and the atrocities of the Holocaust. And I heard from people, and we all did as a government, of the fear that they're feeling about the rise of anti-Semitism in this province. And I want to make it clear that our government stands against anti-Semitism and the rise of it in this province, but it's not just that. We know that we have to use every tool in our toolkit to combat the rise of hate in our province and the rise of anti-Semitism. And we are doing that, Mr. Speaker, whether it's the systemic racism bill that's before the House right now that will give us new tools that we've never had to train public service, to make sure that systemic racism addressed in all of our public bodies, whether it's funding directly communities across this province that are on the front lines of rising in hate, whether it's launching a racist incident helpline, which is a new tool for people to be able to report hate and get the support that they need. Meeting directly with communities has led us to invest in the Jewish community for their safety and their security. We've also just recently passed legislation to help keep kids in schools safe from protests. We also are investing in police training to respond to hate crimes. Mr. Speaker, we understand we need to use every tool in our toolkit to address hate in this province, and we are doing that and will continue to do that. And the Jewish community can know that we will continue that effort. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The bell and the question period. Madam Clerk.
Orders of the day.
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. In the main chamber, call Committee of the Whole, Bill 24, Energy Statutes Amendment Act. Douglas for Committee Room, call Committee of...
Members. I did, member, please. Let's not... Members. Member, you want the chair to recognize the other member, or you want to continue cross... Yes, only he will ask a point of order if he will be let to do it. So other members, I request, be quiet when he's raising his point of order. Member for Vancouver-Langara.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order to ask again that the Government House Leader withdraw his remark that I had spoken to on second reading to Bill 23. I do understand his comment, but that was on a different bill. I was not speaking on Bill 23 on second reading.
Thank you, member. Chair takes it under advisement. Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. In the main chamber, I'll call Committee of the Whole for Bill 24, Energy Statutes Amendment Act. In the Douglas Fir Committee Room, I call Committee of the Whole for Bill 23, Anti-Racism Act. In Birch Committee Room, call Committee of Supply for Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation.
Committee chairs.
Members, Members, thank you. Acting House Leader?
Thank you. It appears that we have a group from Keating Elementary. Is that the group up there? Hello, everyone. So that is the member of Saanich's riding, and he's not in the house to introduce them right now, so I wanted to say a quick hello to them and their teacher, Clark Leister. We have 24 grade 5 and grade 3 students, and I do want to let them know that the house isn't always like this. Usually we're much more friendly in our debate, but I hope you have a wonderful tour today. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the students. So we will take a short recess to allow the minister and her staff to get going on the clean energy bill that we are here to discuss for committee stage. So please retain your seats. Hope to get this underway as soon as we can. Thank you, members. We are in temporary recess. All right, members, let's call this committee to order. We are here for committee stage of Bill 24, the Energy Statutes Amendment Act. We are currently on Clause 1. Leader, third party.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Glad to have a chance to ask some questions. Just some general questions around electricity demand. Can the minister confirm that demand is expected to increase by 15% or more between now and 2030?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome. Thank you for the question. And yes, that is correct. BC Hydro's IRP forecasts a need for 15% more energy or electricity between now and 2030. That's an IRP that was approved by the BC Utilities Commission. Thank you.
Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does that forecast include the currently proposed 6 LNG facilities being electrified?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Although I'm not sure that the question is relevant to the bill and Clause 1 in particular here, my comment on this would be that the forecasting demand includes various estimates of industrial demand, and any project, whether it's LNG or something else that is permitted and under construction or about to go under construction, the load would specifically be included. As we forecast out into future years, that's where it's important to take in estimates of demand that are in the interconnection queue, or estimates of projects that may be in the interconnection queue in the future. Of course, this is why BC Hydro 2 is updating its integrated resource plan, and now increasingly on a much more regular basis, in order to correctly forecast the amount of energy that will be required in the future. Thank you.
Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the case it is relevant to the bill overall, because the bill is about limiting where electricity is going to be used, and focuses on the cryptocurrency not being an appropriate place for energy in this province, and gives the council powers to the Lieutenant Governor and council powers to determine these kinds of decisions. And so my question is about the use of electricity. In December 2022, the province issued a directive to the BC Utilities Commission suspending new electricity connections for cryptocurrency mining for 18 months. 21 projects requesting a total of 11,700 gigawatt hours per year were temporarily suspended. That's the equivalent of more than 2 Site C's worth of annual energy. The calculations around all 6 LNG facilities, were they to be built and provided with energy, would require around 43 terawatt hours of electricity per year. So my question is, if the minister is putting this legislation in front of the House to determine what are appropriate uses for electricity in BC with growing demand, how does LNG fit into the equation around where BC's electricity is going?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the question. I think this is relevant to Clause 4, but we're currently on Clauses 1 to 3, so I just ask the discretion of the Chair how to handle that.
Yeah, of course, questions about other clauses are appropriate during those clauses. We are still on Clause 1. Member.
So generally in Clause 1, we're asking general questions about pieces of legislation. What is the overall strategy for the province to meet its electricity demands if those demands include 6 new LNG facilities?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the member for slightly reframing the question there. So again, BC Hydro looks at a range of scenarios in their forecasting, and that includes scenarios with high levels of industrial demand. That's not specific to the LNG industry, but considering ports, mines, increasingly in the future looking at potential hydrogen projects and LNG. And the bill here, though, we are dealing with a specific provision around implementing a permanent policy for cryptocurrency mining. And again, this is a result of the direction provided from the court when there was a judicial review of that decision that was taken, and a suggestion that a permanent framework for this would need a legislative framework to support that. And that is the focus of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Member.
Thank you. And I understand that the critic from the official opposition was talking about clauses 1, 2, and 3 in his questions yesterday, just generally asking some questions. On the opportunities for First Nations to be contributing to clean energy projects, does the minister see a pathway for there to be smaller projects than the 40 megawatt hours which have been currently put on the table?
Minister.
Chair, yes, this was a question that we canvassed yesterday, and a pathway. I mean, first of all, again, I'll acknowledge that the call for power this spring with a 40 megawatt minimum does not enable a nation to undertake a smaller project, and we know that there are nations who wish to do so for various and good reasons. And the path forward there through the BC Indigenous Clean Energy Initiative and the work with the New Relationship Trust in partnership with Pacific Can and BC Hydro, funding that will go towards supporting the development of those projects, and most importantly, making up the cost differential in the price of electricity so the project is sustainable and viable for a nation, but does not, that the ratepayer does not bear the burden of a higher cost that's needed to make that project more economical. And that's our government's, one of our government's ways of supporting those, the vision of First Nations in being participants in clean energy, in addition to many others, which I won't go into right now. Thank you.
Member.
Thank you, Chair. The questions raised today during question period around the province's emissions, and of course the Energy Ministry has a big role to play in this. How does the Minister see the approach that's being taken in this legislation, repealing the standing offer program, but creating these other pathways for smaller energy projects? But how does she see this contributing to the overall emissions reductions goals, particularly given the addition of potentially 6 LNG projects?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again for the question. So we've had the good fortune in British Columbia to be in a surplus of clean electricity production for some years, but we know that with behavioral changes, a growing population, and the interest that industry has shown in clean electricity to decarbonize their operations, that BC needs more electricity. And we've already spoken about the fact that we anticipate a need for 15% more clean electricity in the grid in the coming 6 years or so. And this means the call for power is one avenue for adding new electricity into the system. Of course, Site C will come online later this year. The BC Indigenous Clean Energy Initiative and the smaller projects that nations wish to participate in are, they're a very small part of the electrification, contributing to the electrification of society and the economy, but of course they're really important to those nations. And so taken together, those projects, decarbonizing remote communities, the call for power, Site C coming online, are all contributing to that electrification across society and the economy. Also, though, I want to be sure that we understand that energy efficiency, growing energy efficiency, and demand-side management are an important part of this electrification as well. So while the economy is decarbonizing, adding new clean electricity sources puts us in a really good position to be able to power that future economy. Thank you.
Member.
Thank you. And I know I keep coming back, but I think it's really important for us to try to understand this. Should we go forward with, say, the 6 LNG projects that are currently proposed, how much of BC's energy would go to those projects? What percentage of the energy generated, the electricity energy generated, would go to those projects?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. So I can speak only to the projects, the LNG projects that are permitted and past FID and under construction, LNG Canada Phase 1 and Woodfibre, which each draw about 150 megawatts. That's an approximate figure. But I think what the member is driving at here is questions around the electricity load of a specific industry. And again, I want to come back to the fact that there are many industries in British Columbia that want clean electricity. Some of them are anticipated to have large loads, and it's important that we have a framework to be able to make those decisions and to see how our economy can grow and encompass that growth with BC's clean electricity. And that will be done through the Climate Aligned Energy Framework, which I think the member's familiar with my mandate letter, and something that is actively being worked on and we'll be saying more about in the weeks and months to come that will help help us chart that path forward about how our emissions goals and Clean BC aligns with economic growth and the clean energy needs that our economy has as a whole. Thank you.
Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm curious, this legislation gives power to Cabinet to regulate electricity going to cryptocurrency. Why not add the LNG industry to that to be able to give the powers to regulate that as well?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, as I explained, one of the reasons why the cryptocurrency legislation portion of this legislation is coming forward really is in specific response to a judicial review of a decision that Cabinet undertook to suspend the connections in the cryptocurrency mining industry. And as the member has already explained, the massive loads that were proposed to be used, in addition with the low employment and low benefits that provides to communities, and understanding that we need to reserve BC's clean electricity for things that match the values of British Columbians, was one of the reasons why we undertook the decision, and that is the focus of this legislation today. The legislation does not contemplate other industries for those reasons, and again, moving forward, it will be important to have a framework to make decisions and to understand how the allocation of electricity and the changes that we need to see as more industries, not just LNG, but other industries that want to use BC's clean electricity for their operations, how we make those decisions, and that we are able to continue to drive down emissions by seeing increased electrification in society and across the economy in a way that helps to keep rates low for people and low for businesses. Thank you.
Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll probably hand it back to the critic for the official opposition. But it's interesting, this conversation, because I think it's very important. The minister indicates that we have to be considering how do we prioritize electricity use, how do we meet our emissions, how do we imagine a future where we're achieving the stated goals of government. And yet the contradiction that lies in the midst of this, for me and for our caucus, is using BC's electricity to fuel a fossil fuel industry in the 2020s. A fossil fuel industry that, according to the International Energy Agency, demand is going to decline for by the end of this decade. So we seem to be putting a lot of our energy eggs, potentially, into a fossil fuel basket, which really doesn't align with the stated goals of reducing our emissions and having a clean energy economy, when we're creating the conditions to continually fuel the fossil fuel industry instead of the whole rest of BC's economy with the clean energy that we're generating. And I just think that there is a fundamental contradiction in this equation. And to see legislation that contemplates understanding that we should be prioritizing, that cryptocurrency is not an industry that we want to be providing enormous amounts of energy to, but the energy to the cryptocurrency industry is nothing compared to what 6 electrified LNG facilities would require. And it's a kind of very puzzling equation that we seem to have in this province, that we, on the one hand, have a government that says we want to lower our emissions, we want to be a clean energy economy, and on the other hand, keeps creating the conditions and subsidizing the fossil fuel industry. Subsidizing an industry that, with the fracking, the extraction, the transportation, the processing, and then the shipping, long before any of the fossil gas gets burned, already creates enormous amounts of methane emissions. And I know the minister and I talked about this in budget estimates, that there are some improvements to methane emissions, but methane emissions, more methane emissions I just can't make sense of a government leaning into an industry, leaning into a dirty fossil fuel industry in 2024, in us having gone from 0 to potentially 6 LNG facilities in this province. As our provincial emissions have gone up, have gone the wrong way. It's very hard to wrap my head around how this makes any sense. We should be, recognizing, yes, we need to electrify the economy. We have the potential for so many other industries and economic drivers and engines, but the amount of energy potentially consumed by one dirty fossil fuel industry means that not only is an enormous amount of electricity potentially going there, but the cost of electricity for the rest of British Columbia, for people who live here, will also be affected, I anticipate. So I just wanted to sort of add that, and really, this is an example of a government, this legislation, saying we should take a role in determining where the electricity is going, and yet not taking that step to recognize that LNG in 2024 should not be where BC is putting its clean energy. So I will hand it back to the official opposition critic.
Thank you, Member. Member for Kootenay East.
Thank you, Chair. Minister said something there about a legislative framework that needs to be in place, to the member from the leader of the third party. We have a legislative framework in place under the SOP right now. Just in regards to that piece of legislation that we're repealing right now in the Clean Energy Act, Part 4, in that piece of legislation under the Clean Energy Act, I think it's Clause 15, Sub 1, eligible facilities, could the Act be amended in regards to 25% participation for First Nations? Could that not be inserted into Clause 15 somewhere?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the member for the question. I appreciate the intention of the question. But to amend the legislation simply to add a minimum requirement for First Nations co-ownership or equity wouldn't address all the other issues that we are addressing here, which is standing up a utility scale competitive procurement process to help keep the prices of electricity down for British Columbians. And that is what the call for power is, of course, and an alternate route of working through the funds and the relationship with the New Relationship Trust to address smaller scale projects for First Nations to continue to undertake. Thank you.
Member.
Thank you, Chair. So the question was just clearly, could that not be amended in Clause 15 to bring 25% equity shareholders to First Nations? Could that not be possible?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Again, to do so would not address the other issues that we are trying to address, which is utility scale projects that help keep the price of electricity down for British Columbians, as well as a competitive procurement process rather than a fixed price process. Thank you.
Member.
Thanks, Chair. And I understand that. So I'm just taking one piece at a time here. I'll address the other side on utility scale size projects. I understand the rationale behind BC Hydro wanting larger scale projects of 40 megawatts or greater. That's understood. A little bit more sustainable when you get that size of scale of a project. It's a little easier to keep things a little bit tighter for cost for the ratepayer. I understand that. My question is, under the SOP, under the current SOP, could the SOP be amended to include 25% Indigenous ownership?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. The SOP, which has not been in place for 5 years, yes, it technically could be amended to do so, but that amendment on its own would fail to address other aspects of the program that has been suspended for 5 years. And with the call for power process that's in place now, of course, as we've been discussing during this committee stage, will afford the opportunity to achieve many more objectives than the complete sense of what Section 15 outlines would enable us to do. Thank you.
Member.
Thanks, Chair. So that's good. So that's one part. So now we'll address the other side on the sustainability under the SOP. Government, under direction from BC Hydro and consultation, wants to bring forward larger scale projects that are 40 megawatts or greater. The minister's also stated numerous times that there is provisions in place. We don't know what those provisions actually are on the $140 million stopgap, I call it, on those smaller projects that have been successful, quite honestly. Minister recited, I think, 25 projects that were part of the SOP, 160 megawatts. We're not talking a lot of power here, but what we are talking about is a lot of smaller communities, a lot of them Indigenous communities that are very remote, that benefited greatly from the SOP program, could essentially be extinguished as soon as the $140 million, however we divide that out, could be lost. I'm fearing that smaller scale projects won't get the recognition or the opportunity to bring safe, clean, reliable energy to their small communities. So maybe we can start there with it was $120 per megawatt that we were trying to get down to, and we're looking towards now a $70 per megawatt price in coordination with long-run marginal costs. Maybe the minister can answer, how does that long-run marginal cost, how will that shape the acceptance of any participants that want to come forward with a proposal?
Member for Richmond South Centre.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I seek leave to make introduction.
Is leave granted?
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. On behalf of the member from Chilliwack, Kent, I will take this opportunity to welcome students from Timothy Christian Secondary. I would like to introduce the teacher Bill Beek, I believe, and the 22 students, all from grade 18? Grade 10, right? Grade 10s, please join us and welcome our lovely students.
Thank you, member. Welcome. Minister.
Thank you, Chair. I believe that we canvassed this quite extensively yesterday, so I'd like to give one more answer, but then maybe suggest we move on. And I do want to be clear again in delineating there are three types of projects we're speaking of, and I think the member's touching on all of them. First is the utility scale projects as part of the call for power, the 40 megawatt minimum, and approaching the long-run marginal cost of adding or procuring new energy to add to the system of about $70 per gigawatt hour. We expect to see projects approach that, but we won't know until the bids are in, and that will be later this year. There is second, the projects that smaller projects that First Nations might undertake through the BC Indigenous Clean Energy Initiative. That is the funding, that funding through the new relationship trust will help to support. And again, part of the reason for adding that funding is that a smaller project simply would not be able to compete. And the price of energy that would have to be purchased by BC Hydro could add burden onto the ratepayer. And that's why it's important for us to help support those projects with helping to cover the cost differential to help bring that into a viable position for those nations, knowing how important they are. And then the third type of project would be those in non-grid connected remote communities. And through projects like the Community Energy Diesel Reduction Program, working to reduce those communities' reliance on fossil fuels by helping them build renewable energy projects. And that's a separate program and not part of the legislation that we're contemplating today. Again, the focus of this piece of the legislation is to remove the sections that describe the standing offer program as we move away from a program we haven't used for 5 years for fixed priced contracts at a high rate into a call for power that will provide utility scale affordable renewables that can be integrated into the grid whilst we support those First Nations wanting to undertake smaller projects through a separate process. Thank you very much, Chair.
Noting the hour.
Noting the hour, I move that the committee rise, report progress, and seek leave to sit again.
Members, you've heard the question. All those in favour? Aye. Opposed? Carried. This committee stands adjourned.
Committee chairs.
Speaker, the Committee on Bill 24 reports progress and asks leave to sit again.
And when shall the committee sit again?
Next
Government House Leader?
Speaker.
So ordered. Committee Chair.
Mr. Speaker, Section A reports progress on Bill 23 and asks leave to sit again.
And when shall the committee sit again? Government House Leader?
Next sitting Speaker.
So ordered. And our final committee chair.
Honourable Speaker, Committee of Supply, Section C reports progress of the estimates of the Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation and asks leave to sit again.
And when shall that committee sit again? Minister?
Next sitting Speaker.
So ordered. Government House Leader.
I move that the House do now adjourn.
Members have heard the question. All those in favour? Aye. Opposed? Carried. This House shall sit adjourned until 1:30 p.m. this afternoon. Thank you, members.